There's just no way of knowing when it comes to like what happens after life, what death is like, even just the unknowns of life itself.
I'm not prepared yet. I mean, I'm preparing every day.
I used to think as a small child you were just floating around in the dark forever, and that was a frightening feeling.
But that's the age-old question. No one knows. For thousands of years since human inception, we've tried to figure out what happens when we die. We've built religions off these things. We've worshipped multiple different things. No one's really found an answer.
Constant about death is that it is always going to be something that's very personal and individual.
First experience with death, actually, I was probably 90 years old. I'm born and raised in China. When my grandma passed away, I was super young, so I don't really remember much of the things. As a 90 years old girl, you don't really understand it. But now, I would say like I feel more comfortable, kind of know what is going on. I feel more in peace, of contented with those experiences now.
There's a lot of unknown to death, but there's a lot of unknown to a lot of things in life. Death is more of a process of learning, and that you can be comfortable not knowing everything. Like, do you really think about oxygen and all of its molecules when you're breathing? We know it's there, but it's not something that's always in your head. I think death is much the same way. You can still appreciate death and not know. We're remembering people that departed. So you'll see photos as well as memorabilia that a loved one has left behind. The ofrenda is this beautiful tiered memorial. Each one will have a specific meaning, but it's important, number one, you recognize like the earth or the underworld, and then also the heavens.
Are aging, right? And so I started to think about that a lot more. And there's an interesting point, I think, in your adulthood where you have that realization that, like, you know, your parents aren't going to be there forever. That's like sort of the really first. You think about it with yourself, but you really think about it, I think, with your parents. Like, that's when it really starts to sink in. And I was lucky to have had like grandparents who lived well into their 90s. I have still have two of my grandparents are alive. Like, so I have not experienced a lot of like close familial death, like some people have been unfortunate to have had happen in their lives, more deeply actually. And
so I was probably about like 8 years old when I first thought about it, and that's when you get introduced, you know, in church you get introduced to heaven, and your first communion you kind of understand the afterlife. And again, I didn't really buy into those things. I always liked the idea of that there is something after you die. I mean, there's a movie called Casper the Friendly Ghost, and the idea is unfinished business, and that's when you don't leave the world because you have unfinished business. But it started to get to a point where it's like, well, doesn't everyone have unfinished business when they die? Like, no one's ready to go when they die.
I'm ready to go. Well, that quote I have up there, the best things in life are not things. People are the best things in life. My wife and I moved here together from Bowling Green. She's been dead now about 2.5 years. After that happened, I thought, well, what do I do now?
The first time I ever experienced death was when my guinea pig died. And it was during a thunderstorm, and she had a heart attack, and it was so jarring to see that 1 minute she was there, a period of extreme stress, and then she was gone. I just can't find myself believing that anything can happen after, especially after my mom died. I had a lot of people tell me it was God's plan, or that God is testing me, and that always frustrated me that or God needed your mother more than you did. And I thought that was very selfish if a God did that to me, if a deity who had this preordained destiny for me would put me through that suffering. I thought it was callous of a God to do that, and it kind of turned me away from it.
My perception of death is less defined as my perception of faith and life. And faith and life is about not always understanding why things are happening the way they are, but having faith that there's a reason that you'll understand at some point. And that's gotten me through a lot.
If God is all good and God is all powerful, why do bad things happen to good people? There are those who will say, oh, everyone goes to heaven. okay, I don't care. I don't. I have no control, and I want everyone in heaven, but I don't know. What I do know is someday everyone's going to die.
Once you bury the body, the soul then joins the grave after getting an announcement from God, whether it's going to paradise or hellfire. Either way, it's going to come back and join the body in the grave, and then a new life begins in the grave itself, where either there is punishment on a daily basis, or there is delight and happiness. Islam is a way of life. It's not just something you believe in and then you can do whatever you want. No, you always obey and stay in submission to the religion. And that's why knowledge seeking is very important. How would I even know what is right and what is wrong if I don't learn the scriptures, if I don't study the prophets?
With Hinduism, if I am a good person, I'm going to be reborn as a human. And that's like the ultimate gift of God, is to be reborn over and over again as humans, because you live that full life. There are times where I believe in reincarnation. There's times where I just believe you die and that's it. I don't really believe in heaven or hell. I think that's like a very reductive and punishing way of life.
Each of us are going to die. And when we open our eyes, I believe we'll see God. And when I say we'll see God, I mean we will see what love is. I can't imagine that not being attractive.
You look at the lives of the prophets and see what is righteousness. So how should I treat my wife, my husband? How should I be with my neighbors? So all of that goes back to the prophets.
I'm not doing what I do because ultimately I want to please some higher power, so that way I live better next time.
Do I believe then that everybody who rejects Christianity goes to hell? No, I don't believe that. I don't know. But I believe love will win.
The unknown is still scary, like it's inherently scary for everyone. And the thing about the unknown is nothing can prepare you for it, it's unknown. There's no such thing as like an absurd death to me. I think dying of like a heart attack or dying of old age is equally as like absurd and kind of like, for lack of a better word, like meaningless as dying, get hit by a car or struck by lightning.
Everybody here, the way I see it, is somewhere between third base and home plate. And many have already started their slide, honestly. But I'm kind of waiting around for somebody to tell me to make a run for it. When I see people die, it doesn't grieve me, because I think, well, we're all headed there. It's ecologically reasonable that I should die, so there can be some room here on the crust of the earth for somebody else.
Death is death, and at the end of the day, it's like sitting between eternal nothingness and your life, and it's just like this tiny little sliver in between.
It's a funny thing, when you're younger, you have a lot of time and no money. You get older, you have some money, but not a lot of time.
I'm Carol Archibald, and I'm 91 years old. Dying is part of life. The only other thing I want to do before I leave this world is make a snow angel. Maybe I'll do it in heaven.
I was an undergrad student at MSU, and I was doing some volunteer work at the local hospital because I thought I wanted to go to medical school. A young kid came in with a gunshot wound, and I remember it because he was younger than I was at the time. He was like 18 years old and had been at Potter Park Zoo, and it was a dangerous area back then with some activity, and he had a sawed-off shotgun wound in his belly, and it had a hole literally that big. And at that point, that was my first real brush with death, and to watch someone die in front of you. I wondered if I should go to medical school after that, because I didn't handle it very well. It was really an awful experience. That was my first brush with death.
I just absolutely love death. And a lot of people question my excitement about death. It's very understandable to miss the human that has moved on. But from a soul perspective, there's just pure excitement, because you're no longer contained by living by a set of rules of the human existence. Death to me is this reawakening to return to all that we truly are, and it's an absolute fascinating and a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I was in a very bad car accident where the car I was in flipped and hit a tree at I think they said 42 miles an hour, and it broke my femur, and I was awake through the whole time, and I could tell I was bleeding internally. When I was discovered in the car, the emergency personnel were so convinced that I had probably died. The only thing they had to cover me, to protect me, was the body bag. So they actually covered me in the body bag. And I remember thinking that this will be the only time I imagine I'll ever be in a body bag in my life and alive.
I've almost completely written off ghost hunting over the years just because I've been able to explain so much that's happened. It's that little bit that I have that I can't explain that keeps me going. You're not going to have any nights like you see on TV. If you are skeptical, if you use logic and common sense, houses make noises, the woods make noises. It's not always a ghost. Don't think everything's paranormal. You're going to have experiences where you aren't going to be able to explain it, and it's going to be worth it. This is what's called a Frank's box or a spirit box. The hypothesis behind this is that spirits can use this to communicate, to say words. You'll get answers to your questions sometimes. A lot of times it's just random words that don't make any sense, but every now and then you'll ask a question, you'll get an answer.
So the first time the first time we were here, we discussed how you said that you weren't going to leave, and that you were going to follow me.
I've never.
You did.
For the years that I've been here, I think in the beginning, what I thought my days would be like and what I would feel each and every day was vastly different through the years. Because what I've grown to know is that death is truly a part of living, and we don't have anything to be afraid of. Everybody handles grief in such a different way. Some want to come to the table as a family and they will tell stories, and some of them are so funny, and it's remembering together. Sometimes it does require a lot of laughter, and sometimes it requires tears. I hope that I try very hard always to be able to relate to the families by being a good listener more than anything in the beginning, and understanding how they want me to enter into their family situation.
By 2019, I was deeper depression. I had, like I said, I had suicide thoughts, but couldn't go or didn't go because I have young children. Who I want to be at that time did not serve my soul. People see you supposed to be happy outside, but inside you never feel that lonely. So God, Creator, whoever, to guide me through this journey, I allow the universe to take over to show me where I need to be.
When my wife died, I remember putting my hand on the coffin. She was before the Lord in the ground. I said, "Have a good time in paradise."
I went on a safari just to see those animals running wild, being so free, that I said, this is what I think heaven looks like, that everybody is happy and I'll see my husband again.
I don't think death has to be scary, and I don't think death is inherently scary. I think the way people die can be scary.
I think regret is one of the worst things that we as humans can do to ourselves, is do things that we later regret. Because then you wonder what's going to happen to me when I go, and I haven't lived the way I should have.
Whenever you're making a decision, you think about God. You think about, is this going to be something on the day of judgment when I stand before God? Is this going to have a positive, a consequence for me, or will it be negative?
We never really die. Your physical body gonna be ending, right? Because we have expiration date for our physical body, and we are moving on to different form. So this form could be human, or you can be animal if you want to, or be plant, or you can be spirit to support people on this side on their journey.
I just think the universe is way too big for us to have all the answers.
When we fear death, I think it's because we fear that life is just going to be over before we have a chance to really make our mark.
Death is an amazing thing. I get that we want to mourn those that we have lost, but we've only lost their physical self. We haven't lost them.
When our time comes, we know that we had a chance at making every day what we needed it to be.
Death doesn't have to be scary as long as you can just live accepting the fact that you are trying your best every single day.
Whatever is out there, I believe it'll be good.